The space station called Crescent Arch floated in the empty darkness between two star systems. It was old. It was dirty. And it was the only place where dozens of alien species could meet and do business without killing each other. The station had rules. No weapons in public areas. No fighting in the trading halls. And cameras everywhere to make sure everyone followed these rules. Yuna had worked on this station for 2 years. She was 23 years old, small for a human, with short black hair and hands that were always covered in grease and machine oil. She worked the night shift in Sector 7, the oldest and most forgotten part of the station. The lights there flickered. The air recyclers made strange sounds. And nobody important ever came to check on things. That was fine with Yuna. She liked the quiet. She liked being alone with the machines. Humans were still new to the galaxy. They had only made contact with alien life 15 years ago, and most species did not think much of them. Humans had no claws, no fangs, no armor on their skin, no poison in their blood. They were soft and small and weak compared to almost every other intelligent species in known space. Yuna had learned to live with the way aliens looked at her. The Kellics with their 4 arms and hard shells would push past her in corridors like she was not even there. The Morek with their long necks and sharp beaks would make jokes about how easy it would be to break a human in half. And the Velk, the worst of them all, would stare at her with their yellow reptile eyes and smile with mouths full of teeth. The Velk were traitors. That was their official job. But everyone knew they also moved illegal goods through the station. Weapons, drugs, sometimes even living beings sold as property. Station security knew about it but did nothing. The Velk had money and connections. They were too big to touch. 3 weeks ago, Yuna had found something she was not supposed to find. A hidden compartment in the walls of Sector 7, filled with small metal containers. She had opened one and found it full of a blue powder that glowed faintly in the dark. She knew what it was. Drift, a drug that was illegal in every system because it destroyed the minds of whoever used it. She had reported it to station security. She had given them the location, the evidence, everything they needed. Nothing happened. The containers disappeared the next day. Security said they found nothing when they checked. And Grun, the scarred Velk who ran the smuggling operation, had started watching her. He never said anything at first. He would just be there, standing at the end of a corridor when she walked to work, sitting in the corner of the food hall when she ate her meals. His yellow eyes followed her everywhere she went. Then, 5 days ago, he had caught her alone in a storage room. He had leaned close, his breath hot and smelling like rotting meat, and whispered what he would do to her when he got the chance. He described it slowly, in detail, while his 2 friends blocked the door. Yuna had said nothing. She had kept her face empty and her body still. When he finally let her go, she had walked to her quarters and thrown up in the bathroom. She had not reported that. There was no point. She had started carrying her maintenance tools with her at all times. And she had started studying. She read everything she could find about Velk biology. Their bone structure, their muscle groups, the places where their scales were thin and their nerves were close to the surface. She memorized the layout of Sector 7 until she could walk it blindfolded. She found the old systems that nobody used anymore, the emergency equipment that had been forgotten. She prepared, because she knew that someday Grun would come for her. And when that happened, she would be alone. Tonight was that night. Yuna was in Corridor 7C, checking the power connections on an air recycler when the lights went out. Not just dimmed, completely dark. The emergency lights, which should have turned on automatically, stayed dead. She pulled out her maintenance tablet. Her fingers moved across the screen, checking systems. The cameras in Sector 7 were offline. All of them. The communication relays were jammed. She could not call for help. She could not send a message. The tablet showed that the failures had happened at exactly the same moment, which meant this was not an accident. Someone had planned this. Footsteps echoed in the darkness. Heavy footsteps. Coming from both ends of the corridor, Una pressed her back against the wall and controlled her breathing. Her heart was beating fast, but she did not let herself panic. Panic was useless. Panic would get her killed. 3 shapes appeared in the darkness. Her eyes had adjusted enough to see them. Valk. 2 coming from the left, 1 from the right. The one from the right was limping slightly. Grun. She had heard he had hurt his leg in a fight last month. They moved slowly. They were not in a hurry. They thought they had all the time in the world. Little human, Grun said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. The translator device on his chest turned his words into something she could understand, but it could not hide the pleasure in his tone. You have caused me much trouble. 3 shipments lost because of your report. 3 shipments worth more money than your whole species has ever seen. Una said nothing. She was counting. 3 of them. 1 injured. 2 healthy. The corridor was 6 meters wide. The ceiling was 4 meters high. There was a maintenance conduit access panel 3 meters to her left. Nobody is watching, Grun continued. He stepped closer. She could smell him now. No cameras. No security. No one will come to help you. No one will even know what happened. He smiled. His teeth were yellow and sharp. I told you what I would do. Did you think I was joking? Una looked at him. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm when she spoke. No, she said. I knew you meant every word. Grun laughed. It was an ugly sound. Good. Then, you know, there is no point in fighting. You are small. You are weak. You are human. Just accept what is going to happen. Una reached for the plasma cutter on her belt. It was a maintenance tool, meant for cutting through metal panels. It was not designed as a weapon, but anything could be a weapon. You are right about one thing, Una said quietly. I am human. She took a slow breath. You have no idea what that means. The Valk did not understand humans. This was not their fault. Almost no species in the galaxy understood humans. They looked at the small, soft creatures with no natural weapons and saw prey. They saw weakness. They saw easy targets. What they did not see was history. Humans came from a world called Earth. It was a planet filled with danger. Predators with teeth and claws. Poisonous insects and snakes. Weather that could freeze or burn. Diseases that killed millions. And in all of that chaos, humans had survived. They had more than survived. They had conquered their world. They did not do it with strength. They were not the strongest. They did not do it with speed. They were not the fastest. They did it with their minds. They learned. They adapted. They refused to give up. When a human was cornered, when there was no escape, something changed inside them. A switch flipped. The fear did not go away, but it became fuel. It became fire. Grun did not know any of this. He only saw a small woman holding a tool in her hand. He thought this would be easy. He was wrong. Grun moved first. He was fast for his size, his clawed hand reaching for Una's throat. He had done this many times before. Grab, squeeze, watch the light fade from their eyes. Simple. But Una was not there. She dropped low, her body folding under his arm. The movement was smooth and practiced. She had spent hours watching videos of Valk fighting. She knew how they attacked. She knew their reach, their timing, their blind spots. Her hand came up with the plasma cutter. The blade was only 10 centimeters long, designed for precision work. But 10 centimeters was enough. She drove it into the soft gap between the scales on his inner thigh. She had studied the diagrams. She knew exactly where the nerve cluster was located. The blade went in clean and deep. Grun screamed. The sound was terrible. It filled the corridor like a wounded animal. He stumbled backward, his leg giving out under him. Purple blood sprayed across the floor. The plasma cutter stayed in his leg, and Yuna let it go. She did not need it anymore. The other two Velk froze. They stared at their leader on the ground, thrashing and screaming, and they could not understand what had happened. This was not supposed to happen. She was just a human. Humans were weak. Yuna did not give them time to think. She ran. Not away from them, but toward them. This was another thing humans had learned on Earth. When you are small and your enemy expects you to run, the last thing they expect is for you to attack. The nearest Velk raised his arms to grab her. Yuna jumped, using a supply crate as a step. She was small and light. In the station's artificial gravity, she could move in ways the heavy Velk could not. Her fingers caught the edge of a maintenance conduit panel in the ceiling. She pulled herself up with strength that came from 2 years of climbing through the station's guts. The panel came loose, and she squeezed through the gap, just as claws scraped the air below her feet. She heard cursing behind her. Velk cursing was harsh and guttural. She did not need a translator to understand that they were angry. "Get her!" one of them shouted. "She cannot get away." Yuna crawled through the conduit. It was dark and tight, but she knew every centimeter of these passages. She had mapped them herself during her first month on the station. She knew where they led, where they connected, where the gaps were that even she could barely fit through. The Velk tried to follow. She heard them tearing at the ceiling panels, forcing their bodies into spaces too small for them. They were strong. They could break through walls if they needed to. But they were also slow in tight spaces. Their size, which made them so dangerous in the open, was now working against them. Yuna moved faster. Her elbows and knees scraped against metal. Something sharp cut her arm, and she ignored the pain. Pain was just information. It told her she was still alive. She counted the turns in her head. Left, left, right, up, left again. She could hear the Velk falling behind, their frustrated growls echoing through the conduits. But she could also hear something else. Something closer. Heavy breathing. The drag of a wounded leg. Grun. He had not given up. He had pulled the plasma cutter from his own leg and followed her. She did not know how he was still moving. Velk were tough, but the wound she had given him should have put him down. Then she understood. Rage. Pure, burning rage was keeping him going. She had hurt him. She had made him scream in front of his men. For a Velk, that was worse than death. He would not stop until one of them was dead. Yuna reached the junction point she was looking for. Below her was the maintenance bay for Sector 7's environmental systems. Old equipment filled the room. Pipes and tanks and control panels that had not been used in decades, including the cryofoam. System.cryo-foam was an old technology. It was used to put out fires by covering them in a chemical compound that expanded and hardened instantly. The foam would cut off air to the fire and freeze it at the same time. It was effective but dangerous. The foam could suffocate a living being just as easily as it could kill a flame. The new fire suppression systems used different methods. Safer methods. The cryofoam tanks had been sealed and forgotten 40 years ago, but they were still there. Still full. Still working. Yuna had found them during a routine inspection. She had kept them a secret. She had not known why at the time. Maybe she had sensed that someday she would need an advantage that nobody else knew about. Today was that day. She dropped through the ceiling hatch into the maintenance bay. The room was filled with shadows and the smell of old oil. Her feet hit the ground and she rolled, absorbing the impact. She was already moving toward the wall where the manual release valve was hidden behind a panel. Behind her, she heard the ceiling breaking. The Valk were coming through. She did not have much time. Her hands found the panel. She pulled it open. The valve was old, covered in dust and rust. A mechanical system, no electronics, nothing that could be traced or hacked. She grabbed the lever. The first Valk crashed through the ceiling and landed in the room. The second followed a moment later. They saw her standing by the wall. They thought they had her trapped. They were half right. Una pulled the lever. The cryofoam erupted from nozzles hidden in the walls and ceiling. It came out as a liquid, but expanded instantly into a thick white foam. The two Valk had no time to react. One moment they were standing. The next they were buried in a wall of freezing chemical compound. They tried to move, tried to break free. But the foam hardened faster than they could push through it. In seconds, they were frozen in place, only their faces visible, their mouths open in silent screams. They were not dead. The foam would keep them alive for hours. But they would not be moving until someone cut them out. Una stood in the center of the room, breathing hard. White foam covered the floor and walls. The two Valk were statues, trapped and helpless. She had won. Then she heard the footstep behind her. Una turned around slowly. She already knew what she would see. Grun stood in the doorway of the maintenance bay. His leg was covered in purple blood. The wound she had given him was deep and ugly. He should have been on the ground, unable to walk. Instead, he was standing there, his yellow eyes burning with hatred. In his hand, he held the plasma cutter. Her plasma cutter. The blade was stained with his own blood. "You think this is over?" His voice was rough with pain. Each word seemed to cost him effort. "You think you have won?" Una looked at him. She had no weapon. The cryofoam release valve was empty now. The two other Valk were frozen behind her, useless. She was alone in a room with a wounded, furious predator who wanted to kill her. Most people would have begged. Most people would have tried to run. Most people would have accepted that this was the end. Una was not most people. "I think you are dying," she said. Her voice was calm. "That wound will kill you in about 20 minutes if you do not get medical help. You can spend those 20 minutes trying to hurt me. Or you can spend them walking to the medical bay." Grun laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. Blood dripped from between his teeth. "You think I care about dying? You have humiliated me. You have made me look weak in front of my crew. Do you know what that means for a Valk?" Una said nothing. She was watching his eyes, watching the way he held his weight. Injured people moved differently. They could not hide their pain, no matter how hard they tried. "It means I'm already dead," Grun continued. "My status, my position, everything I built, gone. Because of you. A small, soft, pathetic human." He stepped forward. His wounded leg dragged across the floor, leaving a trail of purple blood. But he kept coming. "So, I am going to make sure you suffer. I am going to hurt you in ways you cannot imagine. And when I am done, I am going to leave your body where everyone can see it. A message. A warning. This is what happens when humans forget their place." Una backed up slowly. She needed space. She needed time. She needed to think. The room was full of old equipment. Pipes running along the walls. Control panels with sharp edges. Maintenance tools scattered on workbenches. Nothing that could stop a Valk. Nothing that could save her. But there was something else. Something she had noticed when she first explored this room. The floor. The maintenance bay had been built 40 years ago, when the station used different gravity systems. The floor panels were designed to be removed for access to the systems below. Over time, the seals had weakened. Some of the panels were loose. She had reported it months ago. Nothing had been done. Una kept backing up, drawing Grun deeper into the room. Her eyes scanned the floor, looking for the panel she remembered. It was near the far wall, close to the secondary control station. Grun followed her. His eyes were locked on her face. He was not looking at the ground. He was too focused on his anger, his pain, his need for revenge. That was his mistake. You know what I learned about humans? Grun said. He was close now. Close enough that she could smell the blood on him. I learned that you break easily. Your bones are thin. Your organs are soft. You have no protection. A Velk child could tear a human apart. That is true, Una said. She was almost at the panel now. Just a few more steps. Our bodies are weak. Then why do you keep fighting? Grun seemed genuinely curious. Why do you not just accept your death? It would be easier. Una stopped. She was standing on the edge of the loose panel. She could feel it shift slightly under her weight. Because that is not what humans do, she said. On our world, we were never the strongest. We were never the fastest. Everything could kill us. The weather, the animals, disease, each other. We should have died out millions of years ago. She looked into Grun's yellow eyes. But we did not die. We survived. We conquered. We spread across our world and then we reached for the stars. Do you know why? Grun was standing right in front of her now. He raised the plasma cutter. Tell me, he said, before I end you. Because we never give up, Una said. No matter how bad things get. No matter how hopeless it seems. A human will fight until the last breath. And sometimes that is enough. She stepped backward off the panel. The loose panel tilted under Grun's weight. He was heavier than her. Much heavier. The weakened seals gave way. The panel flipped up like a trap door, and Grun fell. He did not fall far. The space beneath the floor was only a meter deep. But he fell hard, his wounded leg twisting under him. The plasma cutter flew from his hand and clattered across the floor. Grun screamed again. This time, the scream was different. Something had broken. She could hear it in his voice. Una moved fast. She grabbed the plasma cutter and backed away. Grun was trying to pull himself out of the hole, but his arms kept slipping. His wounded leg was useless now. Something in his hip had given way when he fell. You cannot win, he snarled. But his voice was weaker now. He was losing too much blood. The fall had done more damage. Even if you kill me, my people will come for you. They will never stop hunting you. Una stood over him, the plasma cutter in her hand. She could end it now. One quick cut and the threat would be gone forever. No one would blame her. It was self-defense, but she did not move. This was another thing about humans that the galaxy did not understand. They could be savage. They could fight with everything they had. But they could also show mercy. They could choose not to kill, even when killing was the easy choice. Una lowered the plasma cutter. I am not going to kill you, she said. That is not who I am. Grun stared at her. He did not understand. In his world, mercy was weakness. You killed your enemies or they killed you. There was no middle ground. Then you are a fool, he spat. Maybe, Una said. She reached for her wrist and pressed a button on the modified emergency beacon she wore. It was something she had built herself, using spare parts from her maintenance work. It sent a signal directly to station security and to every human ship in the sector. A distress call that could not be ignored. But I am a fool who's still alive. And you are the one bleeding on the floor. She turned away from him and sat down on a nearby crate. Her body was shaking now. The adrenaline was fading, and she could feel every cut, every bruise, every place where fear had burned through her. But she was a live dot. She was a live dot in the distance. She heard footsteps. Many footsteps. Running toward her. The cavalry was coming at last. Yun closed her eyes and waited. The security team arrived 7 minutes after Yuna activated her beacon. They came with weapons drawn and lights blazing, expecting to find a body. Instead, they found something that would become legend. The first officer through the door was a Kelix named Darren. He was tall even for his species, with 4 muscular arms and a shell that had seen many battles. He had worked station security for 15 years. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The maintenance bay looked like a war zone. White cryofoam covered the walls and floor. 2 Velk were frozen in the foam, their faces twisted in shock and fury. A third Velk, the one called Grun, was lying in a hole in the floor, unconscious from blood loss. And sitting on a crate in the middle of it all was a small human woman, covered in blood and chemical residue, calmly waiting. Darren stopped walking. His officers stopped behind him. "What happened here?" he asked. Yuna looked up at him. Her eyes were tired but clear. "They disabled the cameras and communications in Sector 7, she said. Her voice was steady. "They cornered me in the corridor. 3 of them. They said no one would know what happened to me." She gestured at the scene around her. They were wrong. Darren was quiet for a long moment. He had heard stories about humans. Everyone had. The small species that had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. The species that other races looked down on. The species that seemed so fragile. He was looking at that species now, and what he saw was not fragile at all. "You did this alone?" he asked. "Against 3 Velk?" Yuna stood up slowly. Her legs were unsteady, but she did not fall. "I did not have a choice," she said simply. The medical team arrived next. They freed the 2 Velk from the cryofoam and loaded all 3 onto stretchers. Grun regained consciousness as they moved him. He saw Yuna standing there, and his eyes went wide with hatred. "This is not over," he said. His voice was a weak rasp. "My people will hear about this. You will pay for what you did." Yuna walked over to his stretcher. She looked down at him for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her voice was loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "Your people will hear what you tried to do," she said. "They will hear that 3 Velk warriors attacked 1 unarmed human female in the dark. They will hear that you disabled the cameras because you were afraid of witnesses. They will hear that you planned to hurt me, to kill me, to leave my body as a message." She leaned closer. "And they will hear that I beat you. All 3 of you, alone, with nothing but tools and my mind." Grum's face twisted with rage, but he had nothing to say. There was nothing he could say. "Take him away," Yuna said to the medical team. She turned her back on him and did not look again. The next few hours were filled with questions. Station security recorded her statement. They examined the scene. They pulled the logs from the disabled cameras and communication systems. The evidence was clear. The 3 Velk had planned this attack. They had prepared for it. They had thought they would get away with it. News spread fast on a space station. By morning, everyone on Crescent Arch knew what had happened. The story grew with each telling. A small human woman, alone in the dark, had fought off 3 Velk warriors. She had used nothing but her intelligence, her courage, and her refusal to give up. Some people did not believe it. They said the story was exaggerated. They said humans were too weak to do what the reports described. They said there must be some other explanation. Those people were wrong. Yuna returned to her quarters after the security interviews were finished. She took a long shower and watched the blood and chemicals run off her body. She counted her injuries. 17 cuts, ranging from shallow scratches to a deep gash on her forearm that would need stitches. Bruises on her knees and elbows from crawling through the conduits. Sore muscles everywhere. But nothing broken. Nothing permanent. She sat on her bed and stared at the wall. Her hands started to shake. Then her arms. Then her whole body. The fear that she had pushed down during the fight came flooding back. She had almost died. She had been so close to dying. She let herself cry. There was no shame in it. Tears were just another way the body dealt with stress. Another survival mechanism. After a while, the shaking stopped. The tears dried. She lay down on her bed and closed her eyes. She slept for 14 hours. When she woke up, there were 47 messages waiting for her on her personal terminal. Messages from humans across the station, congratulating her, thanking her, telling her she was a hero. Messages from other species too, expressing surprise and something that might have been respect. And one message from the Velk Trade Consortium. She opened it expecting threats. What she found was different. It was a formal apology. The Consortium expressed regret for the actions of Grun and his associates. They stated that the three Velk had acted without authorization. They would be expelled from the Consortium and banned from all Velk-controlled territories. The Consortium wished to assure the human delegation that this incident did not reflect their official position. Yuna. Read the message twice to make sure she understood it. The Velk were scared. Not of her specifically, of what she represented. A single human had defeated 3 of their warriors. If humans could do that, what else could they do? The Velk were used to being feared. They were not used to being afraid. Yun closed the message and smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad. She had not wanted any of this. She had just wanted to do her job and be left alone. But the galaxy did not care what she wanted. The galaxy only understood strength. And somehow, in that dark corridor, she had shown them strength they had never seen before. She got up and started getting dressed. Her shift would start soon. The machines in Sector 7 still needed maintenance. The air recyclers still needed checking. The work did not stop just because she had survived. She put on her uniform and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked the same as always. Small, soft, human. But something had changed. She could see it in her own eyes. She was not afraid anymore. 1 week passed, then 2. The story of Yuna and the 3 Velk spread beyond Crescent Arch. It traveled on trading ships and message relays. It reached human colonies scattered across a dozen star systems. It reached alien worlds that had never seen a human in person. The reaction was mixed. Some species laughed. They said it was propaganda. Humans making up stories to seem more dangerous than they really were. One lucky fight against 3 stupid Velk did not change anything. Humans were still soft. Humans were still weak. The galaxy had nothing to fear from them. Other species were not so sure. They looked at the evidence. The security footage from before the cameras went dark, showing Yuna walking into Sector 7 with only her maintenance tools. The medical reports on the 3 Velk, documenting their injuries. The cryofoam system that had been dormant for 40 years and worked perfectly when she needed it. The psychological profile of Grun, a veteran fighter who had never lost a battle before that night. These species started to wonder, if one human could do this, what could many humans do? What would happen if humans decided they were tired of being looked down on? On Crescent Arch, Yuna tried to return to her normal life. It was not easy. People stared at her wherever she went. Some stared with respect. Some stared with curiosity. Some stared with fear. The fear bothered her most. She had not done what she did to scare people. She had done it to survive. But she could not control how others saw her. 2 weeks after the incident, she was called to the station council chambers. This was unusual. Maintenance workers did not get summoned by the council. Something important was happening. The council chamber was a large circular room at the heart of the station. Representatives from every major species sat around a curved table. Kellex, Marek, Draven, and a dozen others. Even a Velk representative was there, Though he would not meet her eyes, at the center of the table sat 3 humans. Yuna did not recognize them, but she recognized the symbols on their uniforms. They were from the Human Diplomatic Corps, the organization that represented humanity in galactic affairs. One of them, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, gestured for Yuna to approach. "Engineer Yuna," the woman said. Her name tag read Admiral Somi. "Thank you for coming." Yuna stood straight and tried not to show how nervous she felt. "I was told the council wished to see me." "We do," Admiral Somi said. She looked around the room at the alien representatives. "We all do." The Kelix representative, a male with a gold-trimmed shell, spoke next. Yuna recognized him as Council Chairman Baru. "The incident in Sector 7 has raised many questions," he said. His voice was deep and formal. "Questions about humans, about your species, about what you were capable of." Yuna said nothing. She waited. "Some members of this council believe that humans are more dangerous than we realized," Chairman Baru continued. "They suggest that precautions should be taken. Restrictions on human activity, monitoring of human movements." Yuna felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her face calm. "Other members believe the opposite," the chairman went on. "They say that what you did demonstrates that humans should be treated with more respect. That underestimating your species is a mistake." He paused. "We have been debating this matter for days. We have not reached a conclusion. That is why we asked you here. We want to understand." Admiral Somi leaned forward. "The council wants to know, Engineer Yuna, what message you were sending that night. What does your survival tell us about humanity?" The room went quiet. Every eye was on Yuna. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She thought about that night. The darkness, the fear, the decision she had made when she realized no one was coming to save her. "I was not sending a message," she said finally. Her voice was soft but clear. "I was just trying to stay alive." She looked around the room. "But if you want a message, here it is. Humans are not weak because we lack claws. We are not helpless because we lack armor. For millions of years, we survived on a world that tried to kill us every day. We developed tools. We developed strategies. We developed a will to live that could not be broken." She met the eyes of the Velk representative. He looked away. "Corner a human. Take away all their options. Make them believe they are going to die. And something happens. We do not freeze. We do not give up. We fight with everything we have, using every resource available, no matter how small. And sometimes, that is enough to beat opponents who should have won." She turned back to the council. "I am not special. I am not a warrior or a soldier. I am a maintenance engineer who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Any human could have done what I did. Any human would have tried." Admiral Somi was smiling slightly. "That," she said, "is exactly the point." Chairman Baru was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "The council will take your words into consideration. You are dismissed, Engineer Yuna." Yuna bowed slightly and turned to leave. But before she reached the door, Admiral Somi called out to her. "One more thing, Engineer. The Human Diplomatic Corps would like to offer you a position, Security Advisor. We need people who understand how to survive when the odds are against them." Yuna stopped. She thought about her quiet maintenance work, her familiar routines, the life she had built. Then she thought about other humans on other stations, alone in dark corridors, facing enemies who thought they were prey. "I accept," she said. She walked out of the council chamber with her head high. Behind her, the galaxy watched and wondered what would happen next. They were starting to learn something important. Humans did not look like predators. They did not act like predators. They smiled and talked about peace and cooperation. But when you cornered them, when you threatened them, when you tried to make them afraid, something ancient woke up inside them. Something that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. something that would never, ever give up. The cameras on Crescent Arch were working again. The whole station was watching. And finally, they were beginning to understand what it meant to be human.